نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي اللهم فقهنا في الدين ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح ربي زدني علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. Alhamdulillah, we are learning some things from Surah Baqarah, and today we are going to cover ayah 246, 247 and 248, the three ayat from Surah Al Baqarah. First we'll go over the word by word meaning inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي لهم ابعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا فلما كتب عليهم القتال تولوا إلا قليلا منهم والله عليم بالظالمين.
Alam Tara, did you not see? Like we learned last time, it is like an expression to say, did you not consider this or did you not see this? It might not be something that is happening right in front of our eyes, but it's something that you say, did you see that? Did you think about that? We say it in English and other languages too. So it's an expression to mean that did you think about that incident or did you know about that incident? It's also a way to, when a new incident is being told, it's a way to incite somebody's curiosity to say, like, hey, did you see about that? Right, so Alam Tara, did you not see? Ilal Mala'i, towards the chiefs. Al Mala'i. Mala'i comes from the Mala, which means to fill up something. And and it is literally, it means something to fill, but it is used for the elite of a society, the leaders and the chiefs of society, because those are the people who usually occupy or they fill important positions in a nations like councils, assemblies, royal courts and stuff. They're the chiefs, and they're also the people usually whose like people's hearts are filled with awe about them generally. Like these are the leaders, the political movers and shakers of the society, literally the chiefs of any particular group or a nation or something. They're referred to as Mala'i. Right? So did you not see towards the chiefs? Mim Bani Israel. Mim, of or from, Bani Israel, the children of Israel. Mim Ba'di Musa, from after Musa alayhi salam. So this is not the time of Musa alayhi salam. Now we're learning a part of, and we started learning about this part from last week, that these are the leaders from after Musa alayhi salam. إِذْ قَالُوا, when they said, li nabiyyin, to their prophet. So this is another prophet. This is not Musa alayhi salam. This is a prophet that has come later on. And in Tafsir we learned this is referring to the prophet Samuel, according to the most popular opinion. Okay, so they said to the prophet Samuel, lahumub'ath lana, that they said to the prophet of theirs, that appoint for us, lana, for us, malikan. Malik is refers to a king. That appoint for us a king, nuqatil fi sabilillah. And then why did they want a king to be appointed? Because the main purpose was, they said that we want to fight, so that we want to fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So appoint us a king for that. Qala, he said, as in the prophet, their prophet Samuel, he said, hal asaytum, would you perhaps, in kutiba, if this was prescribed, alaykum, upon you, al-qital, the fighting. Allah comes from two words, an and la. They combine to become Allah. That not tuqatilu, you fight. So basically what he's saying is, it is possible that perhaps if fighting, you're saying that you want a leader, you want a king, so that you can fight in the path of Allah. But it is possible that if fighting becomes prescribed on you, then you will not fight. That might happen. Qalu, now they're replying. So there's a dialogue between them. Qalu, they said, wa malana, and what for us? Like what is it for us? Allah, that not nuqatila fi sabilillah, that we won't fight. Like, what do you think? What do you mean? Like, what kind of a people do you think we are that we won't fight in the path of Allah? وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا, while surely we have been driven out. Kharaja, to come out, to be driven out. Ukhrijna is a passive meaning they have been driven out. We have been driven out. So while surely we have been driven out, min diyarina, from our homes, wa abna'ina, and our children. Falamma, yet when, kutiba alayhimul kitalu. Kutiba, it was prescribed, alayhim, from ala and him. They become together, alayhim, upon them. So when it was prescribed upon them, what was prescribed upon them? Al-qital. When the qital, when fighting was prescribed upon them, tawallaw, they turned away. They actually did turn away. Illa qalilam minhum, except, so majority of them turned away, except a few minhum, from among them. Wallahu alimun bidh-dhalimin, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alim, He is the all-knowing of bidh-dhalimin, of those who do dhulm, of those who are the zalim. So here Allah Ta'ala is saying in this ayah, have you not considered the assembly, the group, the chiefs of the children of Israel after the time of Musa alayhi salam, when they said to their prophet, send to us a king and we will fight in the way of Allah. And the prophet, he said, would you perhaps, is it possible that you will refrain from fighting if fighting was indeed prescribed for you? And they said, and why should we not fight in the cause of Allah when we have been driven out of our homes and from our children? But when actually the fighting was prescribed for them, they turned away, except a few of them. And Allah is knowing of the wrongdoers. The next ayah, ayah 247. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
وقال لهم نبيهم إن الله قد بعث لكم طالوت ملكا قالوا أنى يكون له الملك علينا ونحن أحق بالملك منه ولم يؤت سعة من المال قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم.
وقال لهم, and said to them, Nabiyuhum, their prophet. So their prophet said to them, referring again to the prophet Samuel, salam, that he said to them, Inna Allah, indeed, there is no doubt that Allah, qad, He has surely, ba'atha lakum, has raised for you Taluta Malika. Talut as the Malika, Talut as in the south. That Allah Ta'ala has, and there's so much emphasis here in just the language of the Quran. Inna is for emphasis. Like if inna was not there, the reason the sentence would still be the same, but adding inna makes there a lot of emphasis on it. There don't be in any doubt about it. Qad is another emphasis, and then lakum, for you, is another emphasis here. So there's multiple emphasis here, that this statement is being, the prophet is emphasizing this statement a lot to them, that indeed Allah, certainly don't about it. This is not what I'm doing. Allah has chosen Talut as a king for you. Qalu, and they said, Anna yakunu lahul mulku, that how can be that for him the kingship? How can the kingship be for Talut? How can it be for him? Alayna, over us, wa nahnu ahaqqu, while we are more entitled, bil mulki, to kingship, minhu, than him. We are more. How can the kingship be given to him when we are more entitled to kingship? Walam yu'ta, and he has not been given. Sa'atan, sa'atan refers to abundance, like a lot of something. Minal mal, of wealth, like as in basically they're saying that he's such a poor man, you're making him the king. How can he be the king over us? We are the rich people of the society, we are the movers and shakers of the society, and he's going to be the king over us. Qala, he said, as in the prophet, he said, Inna Allah astafahu, indeed Allah has chosen him, alaykum, over you, wazadahu, and increased him, bastatan, abundantly, fil ilmi, in knowledge, wal jismi, and physique. So there are two things that Allah has increased in him. Wallahu, And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yu'ti, He gives mulkahu, His kingdom, man yasha'u, to whoever He wills. Wallahu wasi'un alim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all encompassing. He's like wasi, He's vast. There is no, He's all encompassing. His power, his power and his control encompasses everything. And he is alimun, he is the all-knowing. So here it has been said that their prophet said to them, indeed Allah has sent you Saul as a king. And they said, how can he have kingship over us while we are more worthy of kingship than him, and he has not been given any measure of wealth? And he said, as in the Prophet said, indeed Allah has chosen him over you and has increased him abundantly in knowledge and stature. And Allah gives his sovereignty to whom he wills, and Allah is all encompassing in favor, and he is all knowing as well. Then ayah 48.
وقال لهم نبيهم إن آية ملكه أن يأتيكم التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة إن في ذلك لآية لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين.
وَقَالَ لَهُمْ, and said to them, نَبِيُّهُمْ, their prophet, Inna ayata, indeed a sign of what? Of mulkihi, of his kingship, as in the kingship should be given to Talut. There'll be a sign for it. And what is the sign for it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That ya'tiyakumut tabutu, that it will come to you the ark of they used to call it the ark of Lord, right? The trunk which had their things which were the remains from the time of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam. So the sign of his kingship is that the ark will come to you. Fihi sakinatun, in it there will be sakina, there will be tranquility. Mir rabbikum, from your Lord. Wa baqiyatun, and a remnant. Mimma taraka, of what was left. Alu Musa wa alu Harun, of the family and the followers of Musa alayhi salam. Wa alu Harun, and family and followers of Harun alayhi salam. Tahmiluhu, it will be hamal is like hamal is a word that is used for when a woman is pregnant, she's carrying the baby in her womb. It said hamal, that she's got a hamal, and the woman's called a hamila, that she's carrying the baby with her, right? So hamal is to carry something, and this will be carried, this trunk, this ark that will be brought to them, it will be carried by al malaika, the angels. The angels will be carrying that trunk. Inna fi dhalika, indeed in that coming of the ark to them is what? La ayatan, is surely a sign. La here is the lam of emphasis. La ayatan, ayatan is one word and lam is here for emphasis. Is surely a sign, lakum, for you, in kuntum mu'minin, if you are believers. So here Allah Ta'ala is telling us that, and their prophet said to them, indeed a sign of his kingship is that the chest will come to you, in which is assurance from your Lord, and a remnant of what was the family of Moses and the family of Aaron. And they had left, carried by the angels. Indeed, in that is a sign for you, if you are the believers. So inshallah, now we'll go in a little bit more detail. And we'll start from ayah number 246. Last week, when we covered the ayat before this, we learned about the story of Samuel, the prophet Samuel, and how he appointed, and we talked a little bit about it. So basically what had happened was, this is the story after Musa alayhi salam. It is around 1,000 years, around 11 centuries, 10 to 11 centuries before Isa alayhi salam. So this is around 1100 BC. The time when this story is happening, and the incident started from ayah number 243, and we are learning about the incidents of the history of Bani Israel. They are being stated. Allah is teaching us that to give important lessons to Muslims. Like, yes, it is their story, but the point is not to criticize those people. The point is for us to learn, as Muslims, to learn important lessons in social and political life. right? So that's the point. The point of learning is not to know that okay, this one did that and this one did that. What's the benefit of that? The reason Allah Ta'ala is telling us these stories is they're case studies for us to understand and learn lessons for ourselves. And especially because before that we were learning about family life and individual faith and family life, and now we are learning about social and political life. And Prophet Samuel, who was so basically after Musa alayhi salam, we learned very briefly that after Musa alayhi salam, the next prophet was Yusha bin Nun, and under the leadership of Yusha bin Nun, they went back to Masjid al-Aqsa in that area, and they conquered that the Bani Israel conquered that area again, and they started living there. And for a couple of generations, they were pretty good, and they were good Muslims, and they were following the commands of Allah Ta'ala, and they flourished. And slowly, divisions started happening between them. They started getting corrupt, and a lot of problems happened in their time and everything. And then they started dividing amongst themselves. And when they started dividing amongst themselves, their power reduced and everything, and enemies overpowered them, like from Philistines, which was the people of Amalekah. That people, they conquered them, and then they were sent out, and they were basically expelled from their cities. Their houses were taken away from them. The children and their women were taken as slaves by those people, and these people were expelled from their homes and everything. And later on, outside, then Allah Ta'ala sent another prophet to them from amongst them, Prophet Samuel. And Prophet Samuel kind of like got them together. He got knowledge, and Allah Ta'ala blessed him with knowledge, and I think he brought them together. Now, this is a time when Prophet Samuel, he's become very old now. He is very old. And Bani Israel, at this time, he used to live in a mountainous region of Palestine called Ephraim, Ephraim, right? Ephraim, that region, and he has become very old. And now Bani Israel, the leaders of Bani Israel, who were the Mala'i, the chiefs of different tribes. So every tribe had a certain chief. They had the Bani Israel had 12 tribes, according to the 12 sons of Yaqub alayhi salam. And the children and children and children had become different tribes now, and all these tribes had their own leaders and everything. So all these leaders got together, and they came to Prophet Samuel, and they said, you know what, please appoint a king for us. And the reason when we want a king is because we want to go and fight in the name of Allah. So let's just pause here. First thing is that they already had a prophet amongst them, and they're coming to the prophet and saying that, can you appoint a king for us? One thing is, what's happening with them is when they have a prophet, when a prophet is between us, then they don't need a separate king or anything. But these people, they're very much influenced by other nations who have taken over by them. So it is a nature, a human nature, and we see it in different generations of different times, that when one people overpower or subdue another people, then they develop this inferiority complex, and they look up to those people who overpowered them as somehow superior to them, not because of their qualities or anything else, just because whatever they do is better, because, and that must be giving them power. So the other people had kingdoms, and now they're going to a prophet and they're asking for a kingdom. Give us a king. But then, because they're going to a religious authority, they want to please him, and they know what will like please him more. So they know that they're putting an emotional appeal. Basically, they're putting on a face of being very religious, and they're saying, appoint a king for us. And you know why we're asking for a king? Because like we can fight in the way of Allah. We really want to fight in the way of Allah, and that's why we are asking for a king. Another thing here is that some scholars have mentioned that what happens is, if you look at a lot of politics and a lot of political situations and a lot of political leaders at the time of elections or anything, a lot of people go to religion to endorse themselves, because that gives them a lot of like emotional advantage over people. So people have always mixed politics with religion. They like to get so politicians typically like to get religious endorsement, because that wins them a lot of votes, right? And that so it's like, you know what, so these people who are the politicians, basically what they want is they want power. But what they want is they want the prophet to basically say that, okay, I'll appoint a king for all of you, and then he chooses one from all among, that's that scenario going on in their minds. Then he'll choose one from amongst them, and what they'll do is they'll tell the whole community that, you know what, and they'll probably, like, if you think of today, equivalent of today's was, they'll click selfies with this religious authority, and they'll have pictures with this person, or they're giving some donation to this thing, and they'll have those pictures taken, or they'll visit a. So in today's day in this country, like for example, we see some politicians, when it's nearing election time, they'll visit a lot of churches, and they will take pictures, and they'll they engaged in a lot of like religious things and everything. Like, I'm a very religious family or whatever else, and in Muslim countries you'll see a lot of politicians kind of showing that, trying to engage with a lot of like religious leadership or religious scholars of that region, just to show that they are very like thing, and they can get this endorsement, and then people can think of them as those leaders who've got political religious endorsement. And then if anybody kind of opposes them, it's like opposing the religion. So it becomes like, oh, how can you oppose this person, because this person was like standing up for religion, and that sort of a thing, right? So it's a typical political trick that is played. It has been played before, and it is played now even. And they went, so they went for a couple of reasons. Once, they looked up to the concept of kingdom, which was at other places. They already had a prophet, although he had grown old, yes, but he was still a prophet, and he was amongst them. And at this time, still they wanted to go and ask him. And secondly, they were craving for power for themselves, and what they wanted was that they wanted some kind of an endorsement for themselves, so that once the prophet chooses any of them, they could like literally announce to the world that, okay, I'm the new leader, and then they could do whatever they wanted to do, right? And uh, so what happens here is then the prophet Samuel, subhanallah, it shows the genius of the prophet, that he could see through what they are saying, right? So another thing that it tells us is that people who are religious doesn't mean that they are naive, right? Being religious does not mean being naive. Being religious means that in Islam, when we are religious, it means that we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time we are conscious of what different people are doing. We keep our eyes open, and we don't let people take us for a ride and everything, right? And we understand, and we are people who like to be well informed, and who try to understand about human psychology and why somebody doing what they're doing and things like that, as the best to our ability. Obviously, we're not going to turn into like obviously the prophets had wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, and obviously we can't we don't have wahi anymore and everything, but Allah ta'ala guides when we ask him to guide us. So here, then the Prophet Salman, he replied that perhaps you're saying that you want a king because you want to fight in the way of Allah. But you know what? If there was a king prescribed for you, and if there was fighting prescribed for you, then it is possible that you would not fight, right? So basically, one thing the Prophet is saying is, be careful about what you ask for. Be thankful that Allah Ta'ala has not prescribed fighting upon you, because if He prescribes fighting upon you, then if you don't fight, then then you're sinning, right? Because then Allah Ta'ala has asked you to do something and you're not doing it. So if Allah Ta'ala has not asked you to do something, be thankful for it. And first of all, don't ask for more than you can handle, first of all. Like, that's the thing, right? And so they said that they wanted to do jihad and everything, and they wanted to do like work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that was not really the case. And the Prophet knew what his people were about. He understood what his people are and what are their triggers. What do they really want? Are they actually looking for power, or they are actually looking to work for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Also, another concept we learn here is that when we try to do something, and when we try to do something, it is good to have leadership. We need to have leadership. We need to have a proper leadership to get things done. Otherwise, it becomes very hard to do something, right? So when we need to do jihad, when we need to work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is better to work under a proper leadership, not in small groups, because a strong leadership is needed for jihad. Yes, um, and after that, or even though the Prophet Samuel said that, he did not make it an ego issue for himself that, okay, I'm already here and you're asking for a leader and everything. But what he's trying to say is, he's not his objection here is not that, okay, I'm here and you're asking for a leader, but His problem here is that if jihad becomes compulsory, then it is possible that you might not do it. So just think about that. Just think about that, what you're asking, and think before you ask something, right? And this also tells us that we always come across different kind of people, and there might be all believers, but even amongst believers, there are different kind of people. Some people, when they want to do something, they will do it in every situation, even if the it is hard to do something, even if it is they don't have much resources to do something, they don't have much money to do something, much time to do something, or much knowledge to do something. They'll still figure out a way to do something. They'll still go ahead and keep asking Allah Ta'ala for help, and you will see that they'll get it done. But there are some other people um, who who don't want to do it. Then even if everything is done according to what they want to do, there's like, okay, I will do this. You know what, I want to give so much charity for the sake of Allah, but I'll do it when I have like $1,000, because I have to pay this much of my bills and this and that. If only I had $1,000, I would give it. And the same person, when he's given, Allah Ta'ala blesses them with 1,200, $1,500 or something, they're like, oh no, this new expense has come up, I can't do it now. If I had this much, I wouldn't probably do it. I'm not able to do it now. So even if they ask for something, when that thing is given to them, they still not do it. Like, so basically the thing is, whoever doesn't want to do something, they'll always find excuses not to do it, right? And whoever wants to do something, even though the conditions are not exactly how they want it, or how they think are needed, they will still keep doing it. They'll still start ahead, and Allah Ta'ala will help them in that way, right? And some other people will come up, like we said, about a lot of excuses. And their prophet understood the condition of his people, and he understood that a lot of people, what they do is they say a lot, they talk a lot, but there are very few people who walk their talk. There are very few people who actually do what they say they will do, right? And that is a reality that is there. And even though they could be all believers, but then it's just personalities, and there are differences in different personalities. Some people are doers, and some people are just talkers, right? And um, another thing is that here, another quality that we learn of their prophet is that the person who's intelligent is someone that whenever somebody asks them to do something, and or can you do this, or can you do that, and everything, it's like he doesn't just immediately start doing it until he kind of checks, are they really serious about this? Like, the people who are asking me to do this, are they actually, do they actually mean it? Are they actually, if I support them in this, are they going to carry it through? Are they going to do something? Obviously, in our own capacities. When it comes to us, the prophets had different kind of much higher roles and much higher responsibility. So Allah Ta'ala gave them those kind of resources as well. Allah Ta'ala gave them wahi as well. Allah Ta'ala gave them direct divine inspiration as well. But for us, what the lesson for us is, for in our own capacity, whenever we need to do something, then, and there are other people involved, then it is good to see, like, if those people are really serious about it and everything, and then slowly kind of ease into that, and slowly support them more and more. But to check things is a good idea. And another thing is, we should not get influenced by someone's emotional display, right? And we should be balanced in our decision. Are they able to carry this burden? Like, for example, so a lot of people we come across make a lot of emotional display, that, you know what, if for the sake, I will do this, I'm ready to, like, only I wish I was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and I would be like, I would be willing to, like, sacrifice my life and this and that. And those same person, if their hands get cut by a knife or something, they're like crying for 2 days or something like that, right? So it's like, uh, we should not, just because somebody is being very emotionally charged when they're saying something, and they might believe it to be true, but they might not have it in them to stand up to it, right? So it's a very different situation, like that. So we need to figure out who is made of what, basically. And when and if, for example, if you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when the people of Medina were calling the Prophet ﷺ to come over to Medina, and then, even before doing the hijrah, before the hijrah started, because there was a delegation that came 1 year, and they came and talked to the Prophet ﷺ that we would really want you to come and everything. And then they came back another year and then asked him again and everything. And even before doing the bayt, the having that pact with them that they will move, the Muslims will now move from Makkah to Medina and everything. Doing that, the Prophet ﷺ asked them again and again on many occasions, are they ready to bear the repercussions of it? Because his migrating to Medina means they're not just signing up for Islam, they're signing up to put their lives and their properties in danger. They're signing up for a lot of things. So he asked them that in this situation, in the political situation that was there at that time, they would become people who come under attack, and that happened. Later on in the Sira, we learned that there was a battle of Uhud, and there was a battle of Badr was when Muslims had gone ahead, but Battle of Uhud was then when they were attacked, and Battle of Ahzab was when they were attacked by the whole of Arabia. The rest of Arabia had got together to attack them, and it was not an easy thing. But Ansar of Medina, the people of Medina, they actually stood up to their pact. They said, they confirmed to the Prophet ﷺ again and again that yes, we will stand up for it, and they did stand up for it. Right? They were ready to do it. For us, another lesson here is that for ourselves, that we should check ourselves, that we should try not to give big talks. I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll do that. And we should not even, scholars say, we should not make oaths and say, Ya Allah, if I, for example, I really want this, I really want to pass this exam or something, or I really want to get married to someone, or like I really want this or something, and if that happens, I will fast for 60 days, or I'll do this, I'll do that. We shouldn't make these kind of oaths, because if we make them, first of all, we're not allowed to make oaths in anybody else's name except Allah. And then and it is encouraged not to make any oaths. But if anybody does make an oath, and it's a legitimate oath, then it becomes first then, because then a person has to do it, right? Because then if you take an oath that I will do these fasts, or I'll do this much, or I'll donate this much, or everything, then it like uh, and if the situation become like this, I'll do this, I'll do that, and what did you intend to do? Then a person has to keep checking the situation. Have the situation become conducive? Can I do it now? And then they have to do it. So it's putting additional burden on yourself. So in our religion, we are told, keep things easy for yourself. What Allah Ta'ala has not made mandatory upon you, don't burden yourself as more than you can bear, and don't make big talks. Yes, if you intend to do something, ask Allah Ta'ala to help you. Start doing it, but don't say a lot of things that I will do this, I will do this, and don't. It is one thing to plan, and there's a very fine line. It's one thing to plan things and want to go ahead, want to do ihsan, want to rush for the sake of Allah. That is totally something that we should all be doing. We should compete in goodness, and we should do as much goodness as we can, and we should push ourselves to do more. Definitely, we are not saying that, but we shouldn't talk a lot more. We should not say, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, or I would, we should not boast that if I, what, these people, when they went there and they did this event or something, and they had like this much people coming in, and they had this much talk. If I was there, I would have done this much, and I would have called this many people, and I would have been like, it would have made such a big impact, and I would have got so much, impact in the society, and this and that. These are the kind of things that we should not be doing, because you don't know. The situation, you don't know if you were in that situation, how you would have acted, because you would have other concerns. So we shouldn't make those big huge claims and everything, right? And the reply of those people, when their prophet told them that it is possible that you're making this claim that you want a king so that you can fight in the way of Allah, but perhaps if it becomes prescribed to you, then perhaps you might not fight. Have you thought about that? Are you sure you will fight? You'll go ahead and fight? Because what do typically, if you look at politicians, what do they typically do? Politicians in today's world, and politicians who are power hungry and everything. We're not talking about true leaders. When we're talking about politicians, what do? They never go, if there is a war that happens, they never go themselves. They stand behind closed fortresses and everything. They send the poor people of their country to fight. In any country that we see, and people that are politicians of like a typical politician, of course, there are different people of different kinds. There's some really brave leaders as well. We are not talking about that. We're talking about typical politicians who are who don't have the best interest of their people at heart, but they are worried about their own selves. Those politicians who are only worried about their own benefit and everything. Whenever a war breaks out, they don't send They don't go themselves, they don't send their own children, they don't do that. They send the children of poor people in their country because they can easily be manipulated, they can easily be sent for a little bit of money or anything. And they send, literally, when in today's day and age, when we see wars happening, poor people of one country are fighting the poor people of another country. The politicians and the people in power, they don't actually go and suffer, they make the common men of their country suffer and everything, right? But the way of Islam is, when the fighting is done in the name of Allah, then it's not the leader is there doing things with them. When there was the Battle of Trench, and the Muslims had to dig a huge trench outside Medina to protect themselves, because there was no way they could fight a whole army of 10,000 that was coming to fight them. That was the only way to do it. And the Prophet ﷺ was digging with them. Right? There was such a shortage of food that one person had tied a stone on his stomach so that he doesn't feel hunger. Right? And he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he complained, Ya Rasulullah, I haven't eaten for so long, and like we are doing all this work and everything, and I have tied, look, and he picked up his shirt and showed that, Ya Rasulullah, I have tied up one stone to my stomach so that I don't feel very hungry. I feel that, okay, I have something in my tummy, and I don't feel that kind of hunger, and I can continue doing what I'm doing. And the Prophet ﷺ lifted his shirt, and he had tied, and the person saw he had tied two stones on his stomach, and the Prophet ﷺ said, uh, showed him that, yeah, that he had put two stones, meaning the Prophet ﷺ was very involved as a leader. He was involved with everything. He was not the kind of leader who would stand back and make the people do the thing, but he himself was not involved, not at all. He would do things like that as well, and that's the true nature of leadership in Islam, right? And so uh, those people, when their prophet said to them, what did they reply? They said to Prophet Samuel, these people that are being talked about in this ayah. So these leaders, they replied to their prophet, of course we will do this. Why won't we fight in the name of Allah? And one thing here is that why are they saying that they will fight? Because they're saying that we will fight in the path of Allah. That surely we have been driven out of our homes and our children. Now, there are two reasons why somebody could be fighting. One is to fight to spread Islam, to protect the sanctity of Islam. When Muslims are being attacked for the reason that they are Muslim, for no other reason except they choose to worship one God alone, right? And we cannot just link it to our political situations in today's world, because today's political situations, they're very complex, and a lot, the Muslims being attacked today are not always because, and very rarely there are, because they are worshipping Allah alone. Yes, that is happening in some places too, but not all places, right? And what is happening in China is very different from what is happening in Middle East, and it's very different from what is happening in India, right? And there are different situations that are happening in different places, and we cannot just put a blanket statement. But when Muslims, and these are Muslims of that time, when Muslims are fought with and attacked just because they're Muslims, not for any oil or resources, or to loot their diamonds, or to take their resources, take their oil, take their things like that, not for that. When they are fought with, and that was Muslims at that time, the Muslims from Makkah, they were tortured because they said, we will not worship idols, we will worship Allah alone. And their own families turned against them, their own loved ones turned against them, and they started fighting them at that time, right? But their fight was to make Islam Gharib. Their fight was to remove idol worship from the Haram, from the Kaaba, and remove all the idols that had been put there, remove all the incorrect practices which are there, and make it again the center where only one God is worshipped. That is fighting for the sake of Islam. But these people, they were fighting not for the sake of Allah. They were using the name of Allah Ta'ala, that they would fight in the name of Allah. But their main purpose was what? That our homes and our children have been taken away. So we want to fight for that. And yes, that's a legit fight too. But they were saying that, right? And at this time, what had happened was, number of cities at this time were in the possession of armies, like we said, and they wanted to now take those cities back and everything, and they wanted a leader to be able to do that, right? And that is a alleged thing too. That is, it is not wrong to protect your home and your families, and it is not wrong to do that either. But what is being told here is that what they were saying is that we will fight in the way of Allah, but their main motivation was the other way around. And what happened was that if when it became prescribed upon them that you have to go and fight, then actually the prediction that the prophet made was came true, that they actually turned away, except just a few of them. Because they were not really looking for that. They were using it as an excuse to get political power amongst their people and everything, and that became exposed with that. Now Allah Ta'ala could have just made fighting prescribed upon them without them coming here and everything. But through this process, and sometimes what happens is people look similar to us, but when some fitna happens or some things happen in the society, or uh, some events happen, through that Allah Ta'ala shows us the difference between people. Like they're different people, and they could be like a husband and wife, they could be brother and a sister, they could be parent and a child, and they look all same, they have a similar look, like they're all similar and they have a similar kind of thinking and everything. But when some events happen in that society, then it differentiates who is made up of what and who has what inside their hearts. Allah Ta'ala brings it out in different ways, right? And after another thing we learn here is, after doing this, after checking with them and everything, then their prophet had made this dua for this, right? um, so and then Allah Ta'ala tells us that He knows who is, when these people turned away, but Allah Ta'ala already knew these people are going to turn away. And why did He know that? Because Allah Ta'ala is the most knowledgeable. He knows, He's the all knowing of the wrongdoers, right? And these people had made all these promises, but they didn't live up to their promises. And what is the biggest dhulm? What is dhulm? Like we talked about dhulm before. Dhulm is something when we don't give something its due right, or when we don't put something where it belongs and we put it somewhere else. And as we know, the biggest dhulm is shirk, that the right to be worshipped belongs to Allah Ta'ala alone, not any other human being, not any other object, not anything else, not any other creation of Allah Ta'ala, but the right to be worshipped belongs to Allah Ta'ala alone. That's why we say La ilaha illallah. So the biggest dhulm is shirk. But also, not stopping yourselves from sins, that is dhulm as well, right? And if something is made fard upon you, then not doing that fard, that is dhulm as well, because you were supposed to do something, and you're not doing it. So for example, if somebody is not praying their salah, then what are they doing? They're doing dhulm upon themselves. They're not praying a salah is not going to make any difference to Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala's kingdom is vast. He doesn't even need the whole earth and any human being on it. He doesn't need any of us, right? When we are not praying salah, we are doing dhulma on ourselves, right? And another thing that the scholars say is, our body, Allah Ta'ala made us for Jannah, and sinning and taking it to Jahannam instead is a dhulm as well. That we are meant for Jannah. Allah Ta'ala created us for Jannah. He wants us to see us in Jannah, and yet there are people who strive so hard. They work hard. It's not easy to do as well. Sinning is not easy as well, but they put all this effort towards wrongdoing, and they take themselves, so they're doing dhulm upon themselves. But Allah Ta'ala knows it very well, who is doing what, and we don't know what is in whose hearts, but Allah Ta'ala knows it very well, who has what intentions, who's saying what for what reason, who is acting like something, who doesn't have who has humility in their hearts, who does not have humility in their heart. For example, by creating Adam alayhi salam and by asking everybody there to do sajda to Adam alayhi salam, towards Adam alayhi salam, what did Allah Ta'ala expose? Allah Ta'ala exposed Iblis. Right? Iblis, who kept worshipping Allah Ta'ala and increasing in ranks, to everybody else it might have seemed that he is so pious, he's so humble, he's so obedient to Allah Ta'ala. But through giving this command, Allah Ta'ala exposed his arrogance, that he was not actually submissive to Allah Ta'ala. But Allah Ta'ala knew it all along. It was not a quality that Iblis just developed overnight, that he was so good and pious and everything, and he used to worship Allah Ta'ala. He worshipped Allah Ta'ala with humility and a lot of love for Allah Ta'ala. And then all of a sudden, when Adam alayhi salam was created, he just turned against. It didn't happen like that. There was things in his heart that that other people didn't know. The other creation of Allah Ta'ala, there were no human beings, of course, that time. The other creation of Allah Ta'ala might not have known, but Allah Ta'ala knew all along what is in his heart. And through the command, Allah Ta'ala exposed him, right? And that's what Allah Ta'ala exposes different things, and He helps us see what is actually going on, right? And when Allah Ta'ala gives us a command, then or gives a decision, then to accept that decision is the strength of Iman. And to not accept it shows the weakness of Iman, right? And what were they doing? They were doing when he was when they were told to fight and everything, by not doing it and by turning from it, what were they doing is they were going away from the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it was not a small deal. They asked for something, Allah ta'ala told them to do something. They were the chosen people, they were the Muslims of that time, and then they were told to do something by Allah ta'ala through a prophet of theirs, and they still refused and turned away, even though they had made all these promises and everything, that and they had come themselves to ask for it, but they turned away, right? And it was said to them, and their prophet told them that indeed Allah has chosen Talut for you as a king, Saul. As we know, his name in Bible is Saul, and we know that Saul or Talut was around 30 years old at that time, and he was a man from a small tribe of Benjamin, and he was a very tall man. He was extremely tall, so much so that other people used to come until his shoulders, right? So he was very tall, and it's so beautiful that the word talut actually means literally means somebody who's very tall, like extremely tall, right? And that is talut, right? And tawil is something that is long, big, right? And talut is a hyperbole, an exaggerated version of that. So extremely tall is talut, right? And Samuel, which is a prophet, Samuel, what he did was he appointed Talut as the king, right? And he anointed him, and then with oil, and then it is said in biblical sources that he appointed him. But then again, this story, there are we will find things about this story in Bible, in today's Bible, which are very different from. There's some similarities, but there are a lot of differences as well from the Quranic version. The Quran corrects a lot of things which are there in Bible. So, for example, in the Bible, it says that the prophets actually sometimes fight with each other. So there's Prophet Samuel and Prophet Dawood who will come later on, and it is said that the Prophet Samuel got jealous of Dawood because now Dawood had all the attention and everything. Astaghfirullah, may Allah Ta'ala protect us. But uh, and in the biblical version, the prophets fought with each other. The prophets were jealous of each other. The prophets even committed crimes, and the prophets were kind of taken away from, like, the prophethood was given and then taken away as well. In biblical accounts, it is said that somebody became a prophet and then it was taken away from him as well. And in some and they engaged in some things. They're said to have engaged in sins as well and everything. But in Quranic version, the difference is that Quran teaches us that the prophets were all prophets of Allah were masoom, meaning they never sinned on purpose anything. They never engaged in any sins, and they were people who were truly subservient to Allah Ta'ala. And there was no prophet who was given and then taken away prophethood. That's a very biblical account of it, right? So this story as well, when this story is coming to when the Prophet ﷺ is reciting these ayat and he's teaching these ayat in Medina, there are also people from Jewish background who are listening, and they see that where the story is coming from, and where were the differences that people have created, the changes that they have created in the Torah at that time, and where the accounts don't match, right? So there was something, and in biblical accounts, a prophet could anoint another prophet, like a prophet could pass on prophethood to another prophet. But according to in Islam, according to the Quran and Sunnah, we learn is prophethood, nobody can choose prophethood for themselves. Nobody can uh, no one person can give prophethood to another person. Prophets were chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only he chose whom he willed. Nobody can ask for prophethood, nobody could become a prophet. It was Allah who chose prophets, and nobody could pass on prophethood to somebody else, right? So Bani Israel, they used to think was, they used to think that these different tribes that they had, they used to think the tribe of the eldest son of Yaqub, Yehuda, his tribe was most deserving, while Benjamin was the youngest child, right? And also another thing was Talut or Saul was extremely poor. He was not rich at all, and they had asked for a leader. They had come to Prophet Samuel alayhi salam and asked for a leader, but their heart's leader was that the leader comes from their own tribe. That was their really desire, right? And now that Prophet Samuel said, okay, this is going to be your leader, and he made Talut the leader, and this leader was from the tribe of Benjamin, they were not happy with it. And we learn again and again in the history of Bani Israel that when uh, they were not happy with it and they expressed it, like, okay, and this is shown by so much emphasis here that their prophet is telling them, look, this is a prophet, this is a king that has been chosen by Allah. You asked me for the king, I made dua, and Allah Ta'ala chose this for you. And inna Allah, indeed, definitely, no doubt about it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, qad, definitely, surely, He has raised lakum for you. He has raised for you the king. This is a king for you. You wanted something, and He has raised this king for you. It's for your benefit. Why are you not happy? And why you're not happy? Because and the and what we understand here is, um, one thing is Malik is somebody who is possesses authority, right? And here it does not mean authority in the sense of imperialism or a monarch or somebody, but a man who has authority in the way that, like, he would this person would exercise his authority while submitting overall authority to Allah Ta'ala, right? And use his authority within the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and fight under his leadership to take, and the people were told to fight under his leadership to take back the lands. That was the main goal why they had asked for a king, right? And now they're not being happy with that. Showed us that envy or jealousy is a very big thing, right? A person gets what they want. They envy is such a big thing that they want a king, and now they've got a king, but they were not ready to accept it because it was not, because they were jealous of, like, how could this person become the king, right? And similarly, and if we parallel it to the life in Medina at that time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Yehud of Medina had the same attitude. And these ayat, when they're coming to the Muslims and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have a lot of lessons in them for them as well. That, this is not a new behavior, because when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Muslims had come to Medina from Mecca, they were hoping, and their thought process and their hope was that Jews are already very familiar with the revelation and the concept of prophethood and the stories and everything. So they were very hopeful that the kind of opposition, the kind of torture, the kind of oppression they have had in Makkah by the idol worshippers, they will not feel or face those kind of things. In fact, they were thinking that Jews would be the first one to become Muslims because they already know all this information, and they've been asking for a prophet. They've been praying for a prophet to come, and now when the prophet has come and they will recognize him, they'll be the first to join them, and they were expecting brotherhood and they were expecting support from these people and everything. But it is the same thing that, although they had been asking for a prophet, but their hope was that they wanted a prophet from amongst themselves, amongst their own tribes, and so that they could gain power and everything. And again, it shows us that jealousy was a very big thing. A lot of their leaders, a lot of their religious leaders, some of them, yes, accepted Islam right away, who had goodness in their hearts, but some of them actually did not accept, even though they had understood this is the prophet. Why? Because they were jealous, and they did not. They're like, how could he be a prophet? How could somebody from Bani Ismail become prophet? He's not from Bani Israel. How could that become a prophet, right? So it's the same mentality being parallel, and it gives a kind of, sometimes, if Muslims see that they are expecting support from someone and you don't get, you might get a bit disheartened, and there might be doubt that might come. Am I on the right thing? Why? These people are supposed to be people of belief. These people are supposed to be people of very good faith. If they are not supporting me, even, I can understand why all these other people who are not Muslims, they are not supporting me. But if these other believers, they are not supporting me, am I sure? Am I on the right thing? So a doubt might creep in into the mind of a believer, and shaitan might exploit it. But Allah Ta'ala tells us, Allah Ta'ala shows us the psychology, and He showed the psychology to, through this story, He showed the psychology of and behavior of people to the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims. And it is also a lesson for us at this time, today, at this time and age. We might come across Muslims, we might feel that, because we are Muslims, when we meet another Muslim, they will act with us very justly, and they'll have a lot of ihsan towards us, and there'll be a lot of love for the sake of Allah. But not everybody is going to be the same. There will be those kind of people, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah for that. But there'll also be people who will not be like that, and there'll also be people who are supposed to be believers and everything, but we will experience jealousy and envy from them, and we will see even those people from among those standing up against them. But that does not mean that we start doubting ourselves, right? That we don't do that. Another thing is that the objections that these people raised, that how can he be, they said, how can he be chosen? How can the kingship be for him? But and they even said it aloud, while we are more entitled to kingship. Like, they were so shocked. They were like, what is this happening? Like, how can he be the leader? This was not something they were expecting at all, and they were so shocked by it. And their main reason was not what, that he has not been given any abundance of wealth. He's like, seriously, you're gonna choose like a person who's like uh, who's not even rich, who's not even has anything. And what were the two objections? Main objections were that he's from a family that we don't consider as honorable as our own, and he does not have enough wealth, right? And that is a problem of anybody who looks at just whatever is apparent or seen in front of them, that they look at just the power and money that anybody has in a society, right? And even today, we can even assess ourselves. What do we look for? What are the things that we look for example, when we're looking for a match for marriage, do we look at the character of a person? Do we look at their behavior and everything, or do we look at how much money they make and what kind of background they have and things like that? And yes, there is no harm in looking at them, but what is our primary concern? Do we even consider character and things like that? Do we even give those things as importance? And another thing we learn is that it is a nature of many people, majority of people in fact, that whenever there is a leadership that is appointed, they love to find faults with leadership. It is a favorite topic of any people to, in any society, for many people, just get together and criticize the leadership. You know what, this person is this leadership, how can this person be a leader, this person is like so. And yeah, sometimes it's correct, but not always. Right? But it is a nature. It's a nature of politics and social life that people get together and they start to criticize those in leadership, and they always look at like, okay, why was he chosen and why was he chosen like that, right? And here the prophet Samuel actually gives the real reasons. It tells us the reasons what makes somebody, what gives somebody qualities of leadership. What are the two qualities of true leadership? And here he says, first, the three things that he mentions. First is, in Allah astafahu, that Allah has chosen him. The first thing for religious leadership is that they were not considering wealth and influences as things, somebody whom Allah has chosen. And Allah doesn't choose somebody based on wealth or influence and as necessary qualifications for leaderships. These are the things Allah gives anyway, right? But it is knowledge and willingness to do good, right? And the ability to do good, that through which Allah Ta'ala chooses somebody, right? And another thing he said after that, what he says is, what are the other things that he has? Allah Ta'ala has given him abundance in knowledge and physique. That Talut or Saul, he was superior in knowledge from them, and he was superior in physique, as in like physical stature. He was a tall, strong man and everything. And their main objective of asking for a leader, what was said was that they wanted to go and fight this war with these people and free their homes and their children and everything. And to do that, to be in a military situation, to go and engage in fight, they needed somebody who could command the soldiers and who could employ the best tactics and who's fit enough to carry it. Like somebody who's weak and cannot carry that thing ahead and cannot do that, right? So for leadership, there are two things that is needed. There is ilm, there's knowledge, and there is also jism, like their physique, what is needed to go ahead and everything. And al-ilm, there's ilm and there's al-ilm. Al-ilm refers to the knowledge which is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not just knowledge of science and physics and maths, and the person can do a lot of mathematical problems, this and that, or they have a lot of knowledge about science and everything. Yes, that knowledge has its own importance, but al-ilm is the knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So knowledge about all the things that Allah ta'ala gives. And in Islam, especially, there is a sense of accountability, right? When we get certain qualities, when Allah Ta'ala gives us some certain qualities, certain knowledge, certain things, then we have to then we utilize them, right? And if we look at the Prophet ﷺ, for example, because we're looking at the parallel between Medina and this story, that the Prophet ﷺ was extremely fit. In fact, we learn about the stories that he used to race with his wife, right? His wife Aisha, that he was much older than her, and yet, but he understood that she is much younger, and she would like physical play and stuff like that. So he would play with her, and he would say, okay, let's race for this thing and everything, and they would run and race and everything, and he was physically fit and everything, and Allah Ta'ala gave him knowledge, and those things combined, and obviously Allah Ta'ala had chosen him over all humanity, and that made him superior to everything, and that made him truly eligible for that leadership. But then people in the other previously religious leadership, they were not ready to accept it, even though he had all of this. Because what? Because they thought that he does not have the wealth, or he doesn't belong from our group and everything. And um, one another thing that we learn here is that our religion does not teach us to be like like be very laid back, or very weak, or very poor. There's no glorification in being poor or distraught or at the mercy of other people. Our religion does not teach that. There's a very Eastern kind of, in the Eastern world, there's an image of a very religious person, that a religious person is supposed to be somebody who's very poor, who's who's very who's always asking for charity and stuff like that. But that is not true of our deen either. Our deen tells us that if you have wealth, use it for good things. If you don't have wealth, then have sabr. If you have whatever Allah gives you is a blessing, and utilize it in a good way. It doesn't say nothing is bad in itself. Money is not bad in itself. And money is not looked. So somebody could be extremely rich, and we have sahabas, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who were extremely rich, and we also have sahabas who were extremely poor. And even from prophets, we have prophets who saw a lot of hardships financially and everything. And we also had Dawood alayhi salam, who was the prophet, and Sulaiman alayhi salam, who was a prophet, who owned. Allah Ta'ala gave them kingdom and wealth like He gave nobody else. Like their kingdom was very unique and everything. And there's no glorification in trying to be weak, or to look weak, or to be poor as well. Both these things are not glorified. If somebody faces it, then yes, we face it with sabr. But we don't aim for it. We don't feel that just because if we try to have clothes in like we're not very smartly dressed or something, we become more religious. No, it's nothing like that, right? And in fact, there was an incident where Umar radiallahu anhu, later in life, he saw someone walking very slowly, right? And this person was very walking very slowly and everything. And he asked someone that why is he walking so slowly? And he was told that this person has a lot of khushu. This person is like has a lot of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything, and that's why he walks so slowly. And like he's very like generally like so slowly and doing things like that. And Umar then told him that straighten up and walk. The Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had more khushu than you, and when he used to walk, it used to feel like if you would look at him walking, it would feel like somebody is coming down from something from an elevation, and he's walking like that. Like meaning, he would when we are walking downhill or something, what happens is we pick up a little bit of speed, right? So there was a little bit of speed in the way that the Prophet ﷺ walked and everything. Our deen does not mean to be helpless. It doesn't encourage us to be helpless. We ask for Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar. We ask for the best in this world as well as the next. We don't say that just because we are aiming for hereafter, we have to live in pain, or we have to live in hardships, or we have to always be like helpless or in the need of others at that time. Not at all, right? And even if we have everything, only Allah has a right to choose whoever He wants to choose. So what we learn again here is that there were leaders there, and they had a lot of things, yet Allah Ta'ala chose somebody else, because Allah has a right to choose. Nobody can ask Allah Ta'ala why He chose something, and nobody can stop Allah Ta'ala from doing anything. If Allah decides to do something, nobody can stop Him. Nobody can ask Him, and Allah Ta'ala does not need to ask anybody before making a decision. If Allah makes a decision, He gives kingdom to whoever He wills, and He takes it away from whoever He wills, right? And our sight is narrow, and our knowledge is limited as human beings, but Allah's sight is all embracing. His knowledge is He's the all knowing. His knowledge and His power have no limits, right? And therefore we should must not compare our decisions with His decisions. His decisions are the ones that are based on His ilm, because He has all in the world. He has and every sifat that He has, every quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every name and attribute that we learn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's wasiya, means it's all encompassing. Meaning, for example, Allah ta'ala is all hearing. He hears everything. He hears as much as nobody else can hear. If you can even imagine that every single person in this world sometimes makes dua for something or the other, right? And they're making dua for something, they're asking God for something, and Allah Ta'ala is listening to each and every person, and sometimes thousands of people at the same time, millions of people at the same time, right? And when he sees, how he sees, that nobody can see like he sees, right? And but people are sometimes narrow-minded, and when people are narrow-minded, then a sign of narrow-mindedness is racism. A sign of narrow-mindedness is that why is jealousy. That why is somebody other than me was chosen for this, or somebody other than my family was chosen than this, or somebody other than my group was chosen for this, right? And people who look at the world from a very small hole, they have a very limited view of the world. And here Allah Ta'ala is teaching us that through His names, Allah Ta'ala is teaching us here that if we have big goals in life, then have a big outlook in life as well, right? Otherwise, somebody might be really famous in their own small group, but they might not have any weight outside that little group. In one group, and we see that all the time. In a small group where a person's well known and famous, they act like they are the kings, they are the leaders. But when they go outside their group or do anything, they're not. Nobody knows them, so they have to act normal. So they don't go outside that group. They try to stay within that group because they don't like this feeling of not being looked up to all the time, right? And may Allah Ta'ala protect us from it, right? And what we learn is that we should broaden our horizons. Allah Ta'ala teaches us that we should broaden our horizons. And another benefit of broadening our horizons is that if we have a bigger outlook, if we have a positive outlook, if we have a very wider outlook, a bigger outlook of life, then when we come across people who did do mistakes, who behave unjustly towards us, who have a lot of shortcomings, then we'll be able to live with it. We won't be feeling like, oh my God, this person did this, oh my God, this person did that, right? And when we are able to live with people who have some negative side to it and some positive side to them, they have both, then we will be able to benefit with their positivity, and we can ignore their negativity. Every person, every creation has some good in it and some bad in it. The only one perfect is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And any person that we come across, no matter it's our parents, our husbands, our children, our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, our extended families, no matter who it is, any person that we are in contact with, there will be some good about them and there'll be some not so good about them. So what Allah Ta'ala is teaching us is that uh, um, you know um, try to develop wusat inside yourself. Try to develop, and uh, one of the lessons from the names of Allah Ta'ala that we learn throughout the Quran is that scholars say that when we learn about the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, then we should try to develop and try to inspire those names to develop those qualities within ourselves, right? And here another thing is that what we learn is that Talut was chosen, and after him Dawud alayhi salam was chosen, everything. And from Torah we learn that the new king who was appointed, which is Talut, he did indeed work under the prophet's guidance. He was appointed by Prophet Samuel, and he did work under the guidance of Prophet Samuel, and he looked at him for support through supplications and prayers for his success and performing his duties as the king. So he did actually, he was a just king. And so if any other person was made the king, who were the chiefs of the society, who wanted the power and everything, they would have worked, um, when they would have started running their kingdom, or started running the matters of Bani Israel and taking them ahead, they would have done things based on the basis of how much power they can get and what benefits they can get. On the other hand, this king who was chosen by Allah Ta'ala, and that is one of the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, that only Allah Ta'ala had this knowledge that who is the best suited person for the job, because when he was chosen, he actually worked according to the instructions of Allah Ta'ala, and he kept consulting the Prophet Samuel, and then worked according to whatever is the whatever is the best course, and whatever would be the most pleasing thing to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And then Allah Ta'ala tells us um, uh, that when these people were still like, okay, how can he be chosen and everything, even though their prophet gave them the response and explained to them what it is, but then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala even sent a sign to those people that this person is your chosen king. And what did he say? That the sign of his kingship would be that this ark, this trunk that these people used to have. Now we talked about it last time, that one of the historical assets of Bani Israel was this trunk, this ark, and they used to call it in Bible. It is called Ark of the Lord, and it was one of the things that they really looked up to. And what it had was, it had the relics of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam. For example, it had the tablets on which the Ten Commandments were carved. It had the original copy of the Torah. It had the staff of Musa alayhi salam, and some say it also had some remains of Man and Salwa. So to them, these were the symbols of victory and glory. And seeing them or having them with them gave Bani Israel a lot of inspiration to do higher things and make higher goals and do things. So much so that whenever they would go out to a war or something, and they would take it with them and put it in the middle and pray. And subhanallah, one of the things was they even used to get victory and everything. And when they were attacked by their enemies after divisions had started happening amongst them, and the enemies had taken over their houses and their children and everything, then they had also taken away this ark from them. So this ark was taken away from them, and this was something that they really, it was a matter of a lot of sadness for them, and they really looked up to, like, when will we get it back, and how, and when will we have it back. And here Prophet Samuel told them that one of the signs that Talut is indeed your chosen one is that now that he is the king, angels will bring the back, and Allah Ta'ala will decree that that ark will come back to you. It will come back to Bani Israel, and the angels will carry it to you. And so this was something that was told to them, right? And even today, Bani Israel believe that that ark, they don't have that ark now, but today they believe that it is buried under Masjid al-Aqsa, right? Even today, and we see a lot of documentaries and photos have been made about them. And what they believe is that it is in the basement of Haikal, built by Sulaiman alayhi salam, and these were their priests and everything, right? And that's what we learn. One thing that scholars have, some lessons that scholars have taken from this is, some people who are any group of believers who are away from action, who are away from deeds, doing actions and following the commands of Allah Ta'ala, they start relying just on things. And they create relics, and they rely on them more than relying on Allah Ta'ala, and more than doing anything for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. They don't do action, they're away from action, and then they rely on these things. If we had this, things would be better, and we had this things better. And yes, there is a concept of tabarruk in Islam. Definitely, there is barakah in things, but there is barakah in things by another thing is that there is barakah in things that Allah Ta'ala sent directly. That yes, there was barakah in Man and Salwa, there was barakah in the Torah, there was barakah in the in the miracles that Allah Ta'ala had sent to Musa alayhi salam. And yes, there was barakah in it, and there's no harm in seeking it, but we cannot create our own things of barakah. Like for example, today in a lot of places in the world, we will see, you know what, this place is so famous and everything, and we will see like some place where a lot of there's a room which is like glorified. Okay, have you visited that place? And you'll ask, okay, what happened, why is that place so significant? They say, this saint, this was a very famous person who came here, and he sat here, and he drank water here, and he prayed here, and then he went. So now we have venerated this place, right? And that and creating your own tabarruk, creating your own thing. This has barakah, or that has barakah, or like if we do this, there'll be barakah in it. Or this person, there was a very famous person, and he touched this glass, or he drank from this glass, so this glass is now holy, and we should like donate it or something, or keep it as a memento or something like that. So creating that this will bring barakah to our lives, that is something that is not allowed. Barakah is only in the things that Allah Ta'ala has given us, right? And what is that Allah Ta'ala has given us and sent us. And so one thing that today, what does it mean for us? One thing that we, all of us, have access to, which is from Allah, and that is full of barakah, is one thing, which is the Quran. And as we attach ourselves to the Quran, then yes, it will give us barakah, and it will give us sakina, just like this ark gave them sakina. So for example, what we can imagine is, imagine what happens is, like if any of us is holding a Quran, and an earthquake happens or something happens, and we are reading the Quran at that time, just by the fact that we have Quran in our hands, even though there is an earthquake, it will give us a sense of tranquility, that even if something happens, I pass away at this moment. If something happens, then because it is a scary time, if an earthquake happens, things, a person's scared, obviously, but then just because they have that Quran in their hand, they will feel a sense of peace and sense of tranquility, that even amidst all this storm and everything, I have the Quran with me, right? My Lord is with me, right? And they have this feeling of barakah. And so there's no harm in seeking barakah from the things that are from Allah Ta'ala, but not in the things that we create by ourselves, right? And another thing is that what happened at this time was that this prophecy actually did come true. What happened was, in the region, the people who had taken away this ark, what happened in their region, an epidemic broke out, right? There was a lot of sickness and everything, and there was a fear of war. And they thought that if a war happens, and some people, because we are very weak now, there was an epidemic, so many people were sick and everything. And if the Bani Israel attack us now from the for the ark, then they can easily attack us, and we don't want to be open to attack. So what they did was, they put the ark in a cart driven by two cows, and they didn't have anybody to drive that cart, and they just left the cows to take it wherever. Now those cows and that cart reached straight to Bani Israel without any driver, and this could not have obviously been achieved without Allah Ta'ala decreeing angels to help it. So it was, they didn't see the angels, but obviously it was meant clearly that it was carried by the angels. The angels are the one who guided, and by the will of Allah Ta'ala, and then it came to them, right? And what we learn here is that even choosing a leader is not a small thing. Sometimes a lot of issues are created in a political or a social situation by leaders, and a lot are solved by changing the leaders. A lot are solved by, so creating or and choosing the right leaders is a very important thing in any organization, in any society. And another thing that we learn here, before we close here, is that in this, Allah Ta'ala says, was a sign, surely a sign for you if you are believers. One thing is that the signs of Allah become apparent to someone when they increase in Iman. There are signs of Allah Ta'ala all around us. Sometimes we look at the universe, we look at the sky and see, wow, there is a sign of Allah Ta'ala in it. And we look at the stars. We look at a tree rising up from a seed and growing up, and the believer looks at that and said, like, Subhanallah, how did this mud, which has no taste and no flavor and it is brown in color, how did Allah Ta'ala grow so many different from this, just the seeds that go in the ground, and this whole plant comes, and where does all this color in the flowers come from? Where does all this flavor in different fruits come from? If you look at a pomegranate, who put all these tiny like curtains in between, this very super thin curtains in between the the little pieces of the pomegranate seeds and everything that we have? Like, how did this happen? And it was just a seed which went into a tasteless sand. And how does all this color and all this flavor come into this pomegranate or any other fruit for that matter? When somebody increases in iman, when they have faith in Allah Ta'ala, they will start seeing the signs of Allah Ta'ala, right? And sometimes we feel, why is other people not seeing these signs that I'm seeing? It's because they need to come closer to Allah Ta'ala. Then they will start seeing all these things, right? And another thing here is that the signs, even if signs are very clear and apparent, they only benefit someone who has iman in their heart. What does that mean is that some people, when a lot of hardship are happening, or some crazy things are happening in the society, they start developing conspiracy theories. And we all love conspiracy theories in our society, and nowadays, that we love to invent these conspiracy theories which take the minds away from Allah Ta'ala. There's no harm in being cautious, but overindulging in just talking about conspiracy theories, that maybe this group is trying to do this, and that's how they are planning, and they're doing this and everything, it takes your mind away from the qadar of Allah. And when some sign of Allah Ta'ala comes, so for example, if there is a natural disaster that came somewhere, and a lot of people died, a lot of people passed away, then few people would go and think, why did such a punishment come? Why did this come? Maybe we should take stock, or maybe it could have come to me, but it didn't come to me. Maybe Allah Ta'ala is showing me a sign that I should try to get closer to Allah Ta'ala. It could have happened to me. I could have been amongst those people, and everything. Life is so short. People who want to, we see people around us passing away all of a sudden. Somebody sleeps in the night, and they have so many plans for the morning, and then we know that this person slept and they never woke up. Like, they passed away in their sleep. We learn about so many people dying all of a sudden, and everything, something happened. And yet, for those people who want to take lesson from this, when they see that, they remember death and they remember that, Ya Allah, life is too short. Ya Allah, help me to make the most of it. But there are other people who keep, discussing earthquakes, and they keep discussing tsunamis. There are people, if you look at the news, they keep talking about, okay, this is happening, and there'll be an expert panel discussing why is this happening and why is that happening. But rarely would somebody come and say, like, let's take stock of what we are doing. Are we as a group, are we as a humanity, as a whole, how are we doing things that are pleasing to Allah Ta'ala, or are we doing things that are invoking the anger of Allah Ta'ala? As a whole, as humanity as a whole, should we try to spread some goodness? Should we try to do something? We don't see people talking about these signs of Allah. There are signs all around us, but the signs of Allah Ta'ala benefit those who are believers and who pay attention to the signs. And so these people had such a clear signs, and yet they could turn away from fighting. They had asked for fighting. They got this ruler, and this new king was appointed for them. They had asked for it, and even when they were started objecting this, they started, and that was a huge difference between them and the followers of our Prophet ﷺ, that the Sahabas, they used to say, Samena wa atana, we heard and we obey. So much so that one person one time was coming to the masjid, and inside the Prophet ﷺ said, Ijlis, sit down. And this person, he was about to enter the masjid, he sat down where he was. He didn't, like, okay, was the Prophet ﷺ talking to me, or why is he asking me to sit down, this and that, nothing. And later on, like, somebody was coming out, he said, why are you sitting? And here, why don't you go inside? He said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say Ijlis, and I just sat down. He said, no, the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to those people there and everything. And he said, no, but I thought, what if the Prophet ﷺ is saying to me, I don't want to be the one disobeying the Prophet, right? Even in the tiniest of matters, the Sahabas were like that. And here we see a group of people, their Prophet is with them, and they ask him to appoint a leader. He appoints a leader by the will of Allah Ta'ala, by the guidance from Allah Ta'ala, and then they start arguing with him, why is he appointed? We are the one more chosen and everything. And then Allah Ta'ala sends them a sign, and even when signs come to them, so many of them turn away from fighting, which they were using as an excuse to have a leader anyway. May Allah Ta'ala make us of those people who He increases in Iman day by day, and who are able to see the signs of Allah Ta'ala, and who are able to relate to the signs of Allah Ta'ala, and who are able to follow the commands of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and who are able to appreciate the blessings that Allah Ta'ala has given us in our lives, in our families, in our wealth, in our conveniences, in our movement, in the senses of our body, our ability to see, our ability to talk, our ability to listen, our ability to, and most of all, the ability to touch and see and read and study the Quran. May Allah Ta'ala accept our coming together as sisters in Islam in this world, and just like He has united us in this world, may He reunite us once again under His shade on the Day of Judgment, when there be no shade except His, and then once again in Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah Ta'ala accept from each one of us. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك 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 ونتوب إليك.